Hello. I've probably got 10 minutes until it gets dark. I'm in the worst part of the world. Welcome to the place that I talk about comic books on the internet. I'm a comic book creator, not a YouTuber, hence the rampant unprofessionalism. I recently put out a video where I talked about how I believe that AI, while bad, is not necessarily the AI's fault. It's almost our fault for setting up a circumstance where people will not recognize work that doesn't feature a human touch. And we're doing that by creating incredibly bland corporate product that, a normal person, somebody who doesn't want to devote their life to a medium, learning all about it, just probably thinks is fine. It's just fine. It's well, hold on. How fuzzy am I? Am I? Let's adjust these. Okay. So, let's see. Check. So in response to that, I got a question in my comment section that is the question that you kind of look forward to, but you also fear a lot, which is what makes a good comic book then? This person posited perhaps I'm one of the uninitiated or uninformed that can't tell good from bad. How do I know when I've got a good comic versus a bad comic? And that is a very interesting question, and it puts me on the spot, right? It pulls my card a little bit because there's no way to answer this without seeming incredibly snobby. Any answer I give is going to feel so colored by my personal preferences that it's almost useless, right? So let's attempt, though. I have a philosophy on comics and most art that there is, particularly pop art, that there's sliders, right? Like if you're in a studio, put the bass up, that type of thing. And in comics, for me, the sliders are mood, what you might call strong narrative, what you might call cool factor, and then there's other ones that perhaps are less important to me, but I can certainly recognize the value, and that would be stuff like theme, right? And for each individual, you've and there's 1,000 sliders and they're very individual, but for each individual you've got a different equation that would make a thing great. What I'm suggesting in that video about perhaps some uniform blandness to what's coming out right now is, well, not everyone can agree on what makes a bad comic. Most people can recognize a good comic. Right? There is something ineffable about a truly great piece of work that even if you filter through your own preferences, say, I don't care for that, it doesn't interest me, you still have the wherewithal to say, but I recognize its greatness. I see that it has value. And is that going to save something on the shelves? Maybe not, but it should still, in my view, be our goal to create something great. So those sliders that I'm discussing, let's say mood. I give a lot to mood. A story doesn't even necessarily have to make sense if it accomplishes a real vibe, a real sense that you are someplace and something definable is happening simply by feel, right? Perhaps you don't have any idea what that thing is. I mean, a great example, people really like that Dark Knight, whatever the one with the Joker is, whatever the Nolan movie is, right? Have you ever had somebody try to explain the plot to you? It's pointless. There's no, there is a plot, certainly, but that's not what anyone remembers about it at all. It's just a vibe, and people cared for that vibe, and it resonated, and it wins. So even with a relatively weak narrative, or a film that I really love, L.A. Confidential, I had to watch it 3 times before I could recite back to you the beats. But on the first viewing, I thought, God damn, what a vibe, It's fantastic. So things can win on vibe alone. If that slider is cranked all the way up, you might have a winner. Same thing goes for cool factor. We all know books that are near unreadable, but they just feel cool. They feel cool in your hands. You look at them, you go, this is cool. There's a part of me that just wants to be here with this item, right? Battle Chasers for so many people. Nobody could tell you what Battle Chasers is about. Not a living person, but it has such a energy around it that spoke to the time, speaks to people now. That's a beautiful thing. You can win on cool. And you can win on story, right? Story. Now that's the one that if you were coming from any other background in the world, or you don't care about comics at all, and you just, you want to discount some of the other things that matter and focus on, does it make sense? Is it paced well? Does it do the plot points line up in a way that a normal human brain can follow? The basics. That stuff you can win on too, frankly. There's books that are relatively unexciting, but they just hit it out of the park on the actual delivery of the narrative. What was intended comes across. And I know that seems like I'm creating a very low bar for some books, but I don't know, man. It's when you can win in other ways, oftentimes you do, because telling a concise story that hits, I mean, it might be easier to do something cool, honestly. Like, it's a real, there's craft to all of these things, but that one, there's a lot of craft. So, then you get into items like, can a book exist with bad art, good story, vice versa? Yes, it happens. It certainly happens. Not often, almost all of the time. You need these things to have some type of synchronicity. You need them to be speaking to each other, if not saying the same thing, at least having a conversation. But there are occasions where the force of one or the force of the other is so powerful that you can slide by. And at that point, not to get philosophical here, but it's almost like the arrow has hit the target. What could you make different? It was like when they colored from Hell, right? Interesting exercise in some respects, but the arrow had left the quiver. It left the bow. It was now in the target. What could it be anything else but what it was, which was the original was just such a brilliant piece of work, such a success on its own merits. What can you possibly change, right? This is the probably George Lucas conversation in some respects. But anyway, these other sliders that some people have for work that matters to them, I don't want to take away from it, because frankly, my sensibilities don't need to be yours. I just need us to be on the same page in that there is such a thing as quality. It may be esoteric, it may be arcane at times, but when you're in its presence, you recognize it. As long as we can kind of agree on that, then some of these other things that come down to preference and sensibility, such as theme, right? Now, I'm a tone guy, but there's people that are theme people. They want the importance of the work to supersede the work itself. What it's saying, in essence, right? Like, these are people that loved Parasite. Is Parasite a great film? Come on, dog. But people loved what it had to say. And thereby, perhaps it's elevated. Perhaps it's something more than the sum of its parts. The slider went up, and that matters. Whatever balance that is that creates great work was achieved through theme, being cranked to the highest. Now, as a matter of personal preference, work like that, I think, often falls flat for me. I think that great work with meaning can't be made to tell you what it means. It has to arrive at that unintentionally at the same time by both creator and audience. I know that's a little heady, but the work in my life that I've made that I'm most proud of I did not know where I was going. I arrived at a place and it hit me like I was, road to Damascus. I didn't see it coming. Oh, shit, that's what that's about. Holy shit. Wow, I enjoy this so much more. Whereas if you, connive to create something meaningful, I don't see how you could possibly achieve it. You're kind of working against your own interests at every turn, because by over engineering, you're pulling out the you're pulling out the spokes of a story to achieve this very singular goal. And frankly, sometimes there's the path to a thing is very rocky, muddy, full of turns and switchbacks, and you might think that you know what you're saying, but you truly don't. And for the people who do know what they're saying throughout, I think something is lost. But I'm fully willing to admit, preference, sensibility, that's where that comes in, as in terms of what creates a great comic book. I'm sure that I'll be driving away now and something will occur to me that I wish I had said. But in terms of what creates a great comic, the simple answer for me is a balance of elements that arrive at more than the sum of its parts. And the type of fulfillment that you get from a great work is obvious. It is apparent from the moment that you get to page 5. You know that you have something. From the moment you finish it, you're left thinking about it, and it doesn't have to be deep at all. It's not you're thinking about it because you're rethinking the way that you view the world necessarily. It can happen, but you're thinking, "Damn, that was cool," or "Damn, that took me someplace. Damn, that was a mood." I think, for example, Ben Templesmith, right? He's an artist. Templesmith's work is so evocative that any failings that you find in his storytelling, in his figures, it's so immaterial, because to look at it is to know instantly what it is, right? And that's vibe. That's the power of vibe, and when you're in its presence. Sorry, I'm selling vibe again. Very important to me. I think it's like, in fact, I think that's the slider that I want cranked all the way up. Some of the other things, like cool factor. Listen, I've embraced it. I've written stories that I've shot for cool. It's just increasingly hard. Comics used to, in my view, have an absolute monopoly on cool, and now there's a lot of creative filmmakers out there that are taking our thunder in some ways, and certainly video games. So I try not to lean on cool factor, simply because I see so much other competition out there for that energy and that feeling. But in my view, comic books are still undefeated on vibe. Comics have elements that you can define for yourself, although I'd say a few are universal. And when those find an equilibrium that however we want to use this metaphor, it's just keeping everything above water, then you have something good or great. And my complaints, my criticisms of some of the current comics market, and some corporate comics specifically, is they're lowering the bar because none of those sliders are cranked all the way to 10. None. And when you're in that space, I don't know what you're shooting for, aside from solidly delivered piece of pop culture ephemera. Listen, I've made those too, but that's not the goal. The goal is something that transcends that sort of mediocre ambition. So this is all to say, you've got to make your own decisions on what greatness is, but I hope that you can look at some of the books that you might have picked up this month and identify, this intended to be great and failed, this intended to be great and succeeded, this never intended to be great and somehow succeeded, and then this never intended to be great, never succeeded. and if you look at things through that lens, you become sympathetic to things that tried and failed, but you also become very critical of things that didn't try. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I doubt very much that this lent any clarity to this conversation, but it gave me a chance to talk about comic books. So keep asking questions. I'll do my best to answer, hopefully in a more germane and cohesive way than this. Have a good day.